Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the leading employee benefits and engagement platform.
One of the most significant advantages of community engagement is that it helps companies to engage their employees on a variety of levels, ultimately driving employee engagement in the company. So at the same time, employee engagement is at the heart of workplace transformation that leads to greater customer experience. So we know that there is a strong link between community engagement, customer experience, and employee engagement. And that is what we'll be talking about in this episode. Hi, everyone. This is Sushmita from Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. And the guest joining me today is Scott Gould, who is an author, a speaker, and a consultant in engagement. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Great. So before we proceed with the topic, please let us know a brief about your journey in the corporate world.
Sure. So I used to be a church pastor. So I was a Christian minister, which is not a usual career path for most people, but I was at a young age really drawn to helping people and serving people. I subsequently left ministry and I began to use my skills in connecting people and engagement with businesses and organizations. So I've kind of got this wonderful mix of working with charities and working in religion, but also working with a range of different organizations. I should also say that I've always been running my own businesses on the side. So I've always had my feet in business, but the last 6 years in particular, I've been consulting and speaking on the topic of engagement.
Right. So that's why we have taken the topic, the link between the community engagement, customer experience, and employee engagement. So let's begin. Richard Branson said that clients do not come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your clients. Of course, the customer remains the king, but employees are the ambassadors of a brand. So, Scott, what do you put first, employee engagement or customer experience?
That's a really, really good question. And that statement from Richard Branson is really true. Another way of putting it is, if you think about if you're on an aeroplane, they always tell you should put the mask on yourself before you put a mask on someone else.
Right.
I remember when I was a Christian minister, I used to serve other people, and sometimes I'd put them in front of my own family. And whenever I did that, that was always a mistake. I think in the same way, your employees come first.
Right.
Your employees, if you have a healthy organization, you are then able to serve other people. If you serve other people and you do not put your own health as an organization first, it will only be a matter of time before you are unable to continue serving your customers. For me, it's clear. You serve those that put the most in. That's your employees. And then together you are able to serve your customers. You never serve a customer at the cost of looking after your employee. I disagree with that. And there might be extraneous circumstances, and occasionally you might need to, but in the long run, you look after employees first, definitely. And there's a lot of research that actually says that if employees are engaged, then they are in a better place to engage customers.
Right.
And so ideally, you need to have both working at the same time.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, so while going through research on the topic, I came across this recent Fortune report that says that the most successful companies are figuring out how to use community engagement, such as charitable activities, to link workers to their jobs, and as a result, create a more efficient and engaged, workforce. So this is a clear description of how positive psychology can help improve employee engagement. What are some other low-cost, high-impact ways to boost community engagement and employee engagement at the same time?
Yeah, there's a really great example with Fifth Third Bank in the United States. And Fifth Third Bank, they have branches all over the United States, but each branch is really engaged in its local community. And I don't say this in a tokenistic way. If you go to a local Starbucks or a local grocery store that's a chain, you might find in there a pin board and it says our local community, and you will find it is empty, or you will find that the things on there are a few years old. Whereas Fifth Third Bank, They really ingratiate themselves into the fabric of a community. And they do things like they support employees with adoption locally. And they actually have programs that help employees adopt people locally, adopt children locally. They've created their own programs to help with that. They allow anyone to go on leadership training, and they source leadership training experts from the local community. So they are putting back into the local community. They then, when they do things like, say, we want to do a fundraiser for a local community project, generally it's because they have been involved in the community enough to know who those people are. And so now the company really is paying back into the community. And of course, that does engage people, because ultimately people do want to have a sense of place. They want to feel valued within the area of their community. And that does go a long way to engaging people, because it considers their whole life experience.
Right.
And people like to give back. Another thing that they do is they provide education, financial education to their local communities. So again, this is a great example of chain. It's a bank chain, but every branch is encouraged and given the autonomy to find ways to serve its community. And what they don't do is they don't do national community programs. They only do local ones, so that they always remain involved in the community. I think this really, I think the important thing here to underline is this is helping employees with their life outside of work. And that's where we find community engagement really matters, is people at the end of the day are humans before they're employees.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's giving consideration to our shared human experience. Right. That to me just makes sense.
Yeah, right. Okay, so coming to the next question, Scott. Post any difficult time, customers always recall how you handled them when they were in need, and your employees must be assisted and cared for to be ready for the challenge. So we can call it a superpower, but employees can tell if your bosses are really concerned. And when they sense that the care has other agendas or other motives, they become suspicious, truly. So true caring can catalyze satisfaction, engagement, and loyalty, but a transactional version of care can suffocate the same. So to wrap up everything, leaders and employers must really care in order to deliver a great customer experience and employee engagement, but each effort must be unadulterated. What are your views on being genuinely, caring for each other at this crucial time of crisis?
Well, I think, you've already said it here. It's a superpower, you said, when employees really care, and employers really care, and also when employees really care, it's a superpower for that organization. The most important statistic on this comes from Gallup, and they found that if a team leader is fully engaged, 65% of their team will be fully engaged. Whereas if a team leader is not fully engaged, only 0.04% of those team members will be fully engaged. In other words, the manager of a team, whether that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people, what have you, is the most important factor in an organization's engagement and therefore productivity. Investing in your managers is the most important thing. And if managers don't feel cared for, it will be hard for them to care for others. So the first thing that I think organizations need to do is are our managers really cared for? Managers normally make up 10 to 30% of an organization. Are those people really cared for? Do we appreciate the stress that they have to go through by managing people as well as tasks? Do we really care and look after those people? And then they, in turn, will be cared for and therefore more able to care for those in their team. It really is like a chain, and care moves down and down. Now, there is one thing I think I disagree with. You said that true care, can create satisfaction and engagement, but transactional care can perhaps suffocate. I mean, I get what you mean, that sometimes if it's on your checklist, check in with someone, and you have to make sure that you get it done, on a regular basis, that might be suffocating because it's not genuine. But I think that I would rather somebody transactionally cares for me than doesn't care for me at all. I'd rather that they demonstrated care because there was a standard operating procedure whereby they checked in with me to check on my well-being. I would prefer that than there was nothing. Now, what I would prefer beyond that is that the genuine care of the manager was there. But the genuine care of a manager will only come if it's being modeled to them. This is the critical thing. Because many organizations, the higher up you go, they don't model genuine care. And in fact, managers are afraid to show genuine care because maybe they think they're overstepping the mark. We don't train people in pastoral skills, in the skills of, I'm not saying counseling skills, just low-level care. We don't train people in how to do that. So, let's just quickly look at some examples of how you do it. It's as simple in my mind as a phone call saying, hey, I've got 10 minutes. Just tell me, how are you? Remember the names of people's family and ask about them. Remember the names and ages of their kids. Ask about them. If you've got 5 to 10 people on your team, you can do that for all your team members. Find what each person's hobby is and just inquire about that every now and then. I mean, that's where it starts. And then it moves up a bit. When you do that, you become a bit more mindful. Then when you have a meeting, you're able to say, hey, how's everyone doing? And they know that you actually really mean that because you've, over the last couple of months, you've asked them several times, how are they? And you've shown interest. All of this can be done in a 10-minute phone call once a week. Now, if that 10-minute phone call is transactional, hey, that's where you start. And then you get better. And then you find the more you practice care, the more caring you become. I think it's simple. But I think we do need to actually be intentional, recognize it might well feel transactional. It might feel uncomfortable at first. I remember when I was pastoring people, and at times, often these people would be older than me, and it would feel uncomfortable for me to say, hi, so tell me, how's your heart? I'd feel uncomfortable, but I made sure I did it. And eventually I did it so much that it came to a point where it was easy for me and I was no longer afraid to say it. It no longer felt transactional. It felt genuine. So I think that would be my just slight point of clarification I'd want to make there.
Yeah, so it means you just need to take the first step in showing your care and then it becomes easier for everyone, right?
Yeah, for anybody, saying to someone, how are you really, can actually feel really nervous the first time you say it.
Right, exactly.
But you've got to step up a little bit.
Right.
And actually people want us to ask those questions. I found as a pastor, people would not tell me how they were unless I asked. But when I asked, oh my word, they had so much to tell me.
Right.
And it just begins with a conversation. It's the power of just a simple 10-minute. I mean, we could do it right now. I could say, we could do it right now. I could say, how are you really? Right. And that's a powerful question. Yeah, powerful.
Right. Okay, great. So according to a research conducted over the last decade, higher levels of employee engagement and retention contribute to a greater emphasis on the customer, leading to a great customer experience. So after all, it is the employees who are in charge of driving customer focus, maintaining customer loyalty and improving customer relationships within a company. So employees that are disengaged from their jobs would not go above and beyond to assist customers. But the other way around, there are a lot of things that customer experience can teach us about employee engagement. Is that something you'd agree to?
Yeah, you raised a few points there. I think, first of all, an important bit of research to point to was done in 2007, again by Gallup. 214,000 respondents interviewed over 2,000 business units, I think it was, and they found that organizations that optimize for customer engagement outperform your average organization by a factor of 1.7, right? So almost double. Likewise, they found that if you optimized for employee engagement, you would outperform the average by a factor of 1.7, again, almost 2. So add those together and you think, okay, that means that I would outperform someone, up to, 2.14. But no, they found those organizations that optimized for employee and customer engagement outperformed the average organizations by a factor of 3.5, even up to 6.2 times, which is huge. What we know is that employee engagement drives customer engagement and good customer engagement drives employee engagement because both of them provide a mission. Both of them provide an opportunity for us to become better as a team and so forth. I think one of the things that customer engagement and customer experience is really good for and that's the title of this topic of podcast, of course, is that it can teach us an awful lot actually about good employee engagement. One example of this is the trend towards what's called internal marketing, internal communications. The idea that we need to speak to our employees and we need to market things to them in the same way that we've been doing to our customers. And, that's actually a really, it's quite a fresh concept. Now, I don't necessarily like the idea of an internal market. I don't think that actually exists. But what we recognize is it's not good enough to just speak to my employees in a very bland way and then make it look really cool when I speak to my employees. Actually, to my customers. Actually, I need to learn that good communication to my customers is something I should learn from, and I should go, right, in the same way that I think long and hard about how I communicate to customers, how can I then do that with my employees? In the same way, I think a long time about how I can really be of service to my customers. How can I give them a good experience, right? In the same way, we're now learning, actually, we have to think about the same thing with our employees, because the job market is so competitive. There has to be something that you offer an advantage over. I think the main thing that customer engagement can teach us and customer experience can teach us about employee engagement is good communication. If I'm training anybody in employee engagement, I always tell them, read some marketing books and then think about how you apply that to your employee communication. It's things like slogans, making your valuables phrases that are memorable, thinking graphically, developing logos for a team even. A lot of these things here, they are really good human techniques of engagement. We predominantly use them for customers, but we can also use them for our employees.
Right. Nicely explained, Scott. So then coming to consumer loyalty or customer loyalty, if you say. So in the fight for that, rewards and recognition are like big weapons for everyone. The same principle applies to employees, maybe more dramatically. Employees love it when someone notices what they have been up to. They love rewards, especially when they have a choice. So unfortunately, when most companies keep customer loyalty points, they tend to forget about their employees. So what are the true motivators for employees today, considering traditional motivating strategies don't work anymore?
Yeah. I'd have to leverage a slight disagreement with you here. And although I know that you might have some data that proves me wrong, but the data seems to show actually that loyalty schemes and reward schemes and recognition schemes they're good for transactional services, but they actually aren't good for fostering genuine heart-based loyalty. So there's a difference here between what's called calculative commitment and affective commitment. Calculative commitment is I'm committed to you because it makes sense with the points that you give me. And that's very much a head motivating technique. Whereas affective commitment is I'm loyal to you, not because of any points, but because of the emotional bonds that I've built towards you. And I think a simple way we can prove this is your family don't give you points, but you're still loyal to them, right? And your friends don't give you points, but you're still loyal to them. You're looking at deeper things around their behavior and your alignment. So yes, for employees, the number one question with a job generally is what's the pay? Because it needs to pay me enough. Second important question for organizations will be what's your healthcare provision, which we could merge into pay. And for some countries, this isn't relevant. I'm based in Europe. Healthcare isn't a thing that I'm thinking about with an employer. Then it immediately jumps to issues around work flexibility. Can I still live a good life? Can I still have hours and flexibility to pick up my kids, work remotely, and so forth? We find that the biggest things that influence somebody staying at an organization is actually how their manager treats them. There's a really great saying that people don't leave companies, they leave managers.
Right.
And actually, if you have a manager that ensures that you're paid fairly, and I do think that most companies do underpay. I mean, I'll point to an example about that in a minute, but they're looking for, am I paid fairly for what I do? Do I have some flexibility? And then do I have a manager that believes in me? Do I have a job that enables me to do my best work? And you know what? It's generally the manager that will enable you to do your best work because they're the one that needs to customize your role around your strengths. Do I have an opportunity to progress in what I do? These questions that I'm calling out are the standard employee engagement questions. You'll notice none of those questions will be things like, do I get rewards? People want to know they're recognized, yes, and praised for what they do, but it's even if we think about a recognition scheme like Employee of the Month or Best Salesperson, it's only one person that wins that out of hundreds or thousands of employees. So actually the most important motivating skills, and we found this out now during the pandemic, people want flexibility of work. They want to be able to work and live, not work to live. It's that simple. Now, I think the example that I like to look at here is a company called Gravity Payments based out of Seattle, and their founder, Dan Price, he used to pay himself millions and millions. And then he read an article based on some positive psychology research that $75,000 a year is the amount that people need to make to be happy. If you make more than $75,000 a year, your happiness doesn't really increase that much more, but your happiness massively increases if you get paid up to $75,000. So what he did was he gave himself a pay cut. He started paying himself $70,000, and he made sure that everyone in his company was paid $70,000. Well, flipping heck. Nobody leaves the company. Why would you for that pay? People are happier. They've grown their revenue 500% because people love their jobs and care, and they're safe. But the thing he points to as being the most important thing that changed was people started having babies. Because up until then, very few people had babies because very few people could afford to. Now, you look at an employer that matters. You're thinking, I want to get a job, and there's a job going at Gravity Payments. Flipping out, you're going to go for that. I mean, even if the pay was less, the fact that it's a place where people can have families and their work doesn't cannibalize their lives, these are the things that matters. And the pandemic has taught us this. Right. I really hope managers are listening.
Yeah. Okay. So, Scott, tell us more about your book, The Shape of Engagement, the art of building enduring connections with your customers, employees, and communities.
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I mean, the book is almost 4 years old, and it is 7 shapes that provide a visual way of understanding how engagement works. The thing with engagement is, even though we're talking about it now, we haven't even really defined what engagement is. And in the book, I go on to explain that engagement is togetherness, togetherness with employees, togetherness with customers, togetherness with communities. And what I also say is that the process of engagement, the process of coming together, is the same, whether it's for employees, customers, or communities. But what happens is these different industries tend to learn their own lessons and not share them. What I endeavor to do is I endeavor to show through these 7 models that we can learn a lot from other forms of engagement that will help our own form of engagement. I think perhaps the most important model in the book is chapter 6, that looks at the 6 actual psychological levels of engagement, which is pretty great, because then people know what to do. No longer is engagement this mythical power. It's something they can understand, and they know the stages of it, and they can grow accordingly, right? So that's the book.
Okay, amazing. So finally, any suggestions to the aspiring HRs and employee engagement enthusiasts listening to us now?
I think it's recognizing that it really is about people living a rich life, living a happy life. And your best policies will be the ones that enable people to do that. I think the pandemic has shown us people's appetite and ability to work remotely, to live a more integrated home life. If you can find a way to drop people down to a 4-day week, if you can arrange yourself around outcomes rather than hours, if you can position yourself so that managers are well supported to support their teams, and you keep your eye upon what the customer needs in the same way, I think you will do very, very well. And I hope that's what we can do as a species, is move towards no longer living to work, but we can live and work in equal measures and enjoy both.
Okay. So any HR leader whom you follow, or any HR book that you're reading right now?
My favorite HR book, and the one that I keep coming back to again and again, is a very old book called Gung Ho by Ken Blanchard, who wrote 1 Minute Manager. And it is the best book for the number of pages on HR. Gung Ho, G-U-N-G, Ho, H-O, by Ken Blanchard and Sheldon Bowles. It is amazing. Do yourself a favor and, spend £5, $5, €5, 5 rupees, what have you, and get yourself that book. If you've not read it, it is amazing, and it will change your life for the good.
Great. I'll link this up in the show notes of this podcast. So finally, how can our listeners reach out to you, Scott?
You can check out my website, Scott Gould, SCOTTGOULD.me. You can email me, scott@scottgould.me. I love speaking to people. And you can hit me up on different social media at Scott Gould. And I love chatting to people. So please don't be shy about saying hello. It's a joy for me to respond to any questions.
Okay, so that was great connecting to you, Scott. Thanks a lot for joining me in the Vantage HR Influencers podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and all the best.
Thanks for listening to Vantage HR Influencers podcast, where we engage with HR influencers about human resources. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for new episodes.